If you've ever attended Christian Mass, you might recognize this little tradition they also perform in the Houses of Parliament. Before entering or leaving the chamber, members give a little bow to the chair as a sign of respect for the House. Now that's pretty specific, but it got me thinking, what are the other traditions and things that we don't really understand about Parliament? Also, who teaches new members of Parliament this etiquette? And worse, what happens if you break these rules?
It's high time that Erewash and the wider Derbyshire got itself a Labour council that will actually repair the roads.
This is Adam Thompson, a newly elected MP from Erewash, and he's been asking these questions himself since winning his recent election in July 2024. My name is Evan Edinger. I grew up in the US, but moved to London 13 years ago, and now I make videos about all the interesting little differences I've noticed along the way. Today, Adam has invited me to Parliament to reveal exactly what it's like to become an MP, including all the strange rules, odd traditions, and the hidden side of Parliament that you didn't know existed.
It's really complicated. There are lots of rules that you would never notice watching it on TV. I got really told off a few months ago for walking the wrong way out of the room.
So, without further ado, come on, House of Commons. Huh? All right, so Adam Thompson, MP. How am I supposed to address you?
Yeah, Adam Thompson MP, absolutely.
Is it like when someone becomes a doctorate, you have to say doctor?
Yeah, I mean, I also have a doctorate, but I don't really use that anymore. Yeah.
So you can be Dr. MP?
Technically, yes, but I think that's just a bit too much.
Can you describe to me how it felt first stepping through Parliament after you were elected?
I mean, overwhelming is the thing that comes to mind first off. So I'd been here like 2-3 times in my life. You know, I grew up on a very ordinary part of North Cardiff and then moved to the East Midlands and went to a very ordinary school. I've never been really in this kind of place. I've been here for a couple of meetings. And then the first time I came in and looked around the house properly, the Houses of Parliament, was on my first day on the job. And they assign you a buddy.
Yeah.
And I had a lovely woman called Camilla who usually works in comms in the Houses of Parliament, and she showed me around. She gave me a tour, had a really wonderful look around the place, and yeah, it was just powerfully overwhelming. Because everything's so kind of steeped in history, right? But
you're part of the history.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. And being a part of that for the first time, I think the thing that comes to mind most of is after I've been here a couple of weeks and I swore in as a brand new member of Parliament.
I do solemnly, sincerely and truly declare and affirm that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to His Majesty King Charles, his heirs and successors.
I said the words that you say when you swear in and you say, I promise to be a great MP, etc. It's only a couple of sentences. You go up the back of the room. And I remember thinking to myself around the back, I was like, you know, I'm not married, I don't have children. I thought to myself, that was probably the most significant moment of my life. The whole thing was just powerfully overwhelming.
I mean, that is how I felt swearing in to be a British citizen.
Yeah, right.
Especially because it's just quick. You say your lines, you look at the Queen as the national anthem plays, and that's it.
Yeah, it's exactly like that.
Fascinating. So you are one of the newest members of Parliament, correct?
Yeah.
So how do you get to grips with understanding how Parliament works your first day? Like you said you had a buddy. I want to know more about like rules, any mistakes that you possibly have made without realizing it. Because when I had a job in an office, it took about a month till I was trained up to be able to do the real stuff. So how long do you feel like it took you to get trained up to do your stuff?
That's a great question. And, you know, I think everybody thinks when you become a member of Parliament, you're ready to go straight away. You know, I turn up here, I had my buddy, she showed me around, and then I was given a backpack with a laptop and said, here you go. I didn't even have an office for about 3 months. You don't have any staff to start with, you have to hire your staff. So the whole first summer, really, I spent really getting everything in place. And that's before we even get to the really complicated rules. All of the debate setup in Parliament that everybody watches on the TV, that's really complicated. And there are lots of minor rules that you have to follow quite specifically. I got really told off a few months ago because I was in a really busy debate, lots of quite heated discussion going on, and I had to leave to use the toilet because I'm a person, and sometimes I've got to do that. And I ended up walking the wrong way out of the room, and I got told off for walking the wrong way because I walked in front of the wrong people, and there's just so many rules.
Please don't walk in front. The member about to speak, I hope they're going to apologise walking round the chamber. No need now. Wendy Chamberlain.
How long till I got to the point where I was comfortable, I'd say a few months, but every day is very much still a learning day.
Who is the one that established the don't walk the wrong way type thing?
Well, yeah, I mean, the answer is hundreds of years of history.
All within my power to preserve and cherish its best traditions.
And I think that's one of those tiny little rules that don't really make sense watching it on TV. But it's about not breaking the sightline of the speaker. If you are standing up to give a speech, you are addressing your speech to the speaker, whether it's Mr. Speaker or one of the deputy speakers, and no one is allowed to break the line of sight between you. Because, you know, in theory, the person giving the speech and the speaker are in conversation, right? And if you walk between them, that's really rude. You know, if somebody passed between us right now, we'd say, hey, that's kind of rude.
Man, film a video.
We're doing a video. What are you going?
And because there are so many different rules to keep track of, as part of their induction into the House of Commons, MPs can pick up one of these handy little leaflets, which details over 50 of these rules and conventions to try and help them avoid making any embarrassing faux pas.
When you enter and exit the chamber, whichever entrance you come in, you have to do a little head bow. You're actually not nodding to the speaker, you're nodding to the chair. But it's not really the object, it's the institution of Parliament.
So it's like the American flag, you know?
Yeah, it's similar, yeah.
To bring that in.
You're sort of giving deference to our nation's legislature.
That's actually quite beautiful.
Yeah, I think it's really cool.
That's quite nice.
On what basis the government...
One thing you'll absolutely have noticed if you've ever watched parliamentary proceedings on TV is the game of whack-a-mole between ministers and the rest of the House. A minister finishes speaking and sits down, MPs rise to signify they'd like to contribute, the speaker or deputy speaker calls on someone, everyone else sits down, and repeat. Members of Parliament can write to the speaker in advance to indicate that they wish to speak and will sometimes be prioritized if the topic is in their area of expertise or if they have a specific connection to the topic, but there is no guarantee, so the game continues. But when the chair themselves stands up, everybody else sits down.
Prime Minister, when I stand up, please sit down. I'm not going to be challenged. You may be the Prime Minister of this country, but in this House, I'm in charge.
You know, our debate chamber, our Parliament has been set up over such a long period of time. These rules have come into play, and in isolation, they don't really make sense. But when you add all these rules together, what they result in is a cordial debating atmosphere, in theory.
Speaking of the cordial atmosphere, I feel like a lot of the clips people might see of Parliament are usually quite vitriolic, but do you have any relationships positively with people across the aisle?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, you're absolutely right. Often the clips that go viral, the ones that are famous, are the ones where people are really spiky towards each other and are quite vitriolic. But I've got a lovely experience. When you first start in Parliament, you give your first speech. And your first speech, there's a convention that you don't get intervened on. So when you're speaking in Parliament, it's perfectly legitimate for another member of Parliament to stand up and say, oh, Evan, would you give way? And I just want to say what I want to say for a few seconds.
Members. Yes, I will gladly.
Thank the honourable member for giving way, and he and I served on that Public Bill Committee together. But hasn't he missed a slightly important point on this?
That's totally normal behaviour, but
He's so stressed. It's
it
so
is so
formal,
stressful.
Like,
yeah.
Excuse me, I'm going to interrupt. I'm like,
yeah, and sometimes it's to be nice. Sometimes it's to say, oh, you know, do you agree with this point that I'm going to make? Sometimes they're trying to throw you off with the opposition. That's part of the cut and thrust of politics. But your first ever speech, it's convention. You're not open to that. So I delivered my first speech and it was still pretty good. But then the second one, I was probably more nervous for than the first one because that was the first one where I was open to being intervened on. And as such, you know, I was giving this speech and a member of the Conservative Party, he stood up and he said, oh, would you give way? And I sort of nervously sat down and said, yes, I'll give way. And he asked me quite a difficult question. I forget what it was now, to be honest, but I remember standing up and batting it away, coming up with a response, then delivering the rest of my speech and sitting down and sort of breathing at that point because, you know, I'm much more comfortable now, but those first few speeches were really terrifying. Anyway, I saw this person in the corridor a couple of days later and he said, oh, you made a good speech the other day. And I said, oh, thank you, that's very kind. I was very nervous, to be honest. And I was especially nervous when you intervened on me. And he said, no, you dealt with it really well. And I think that's, you know, there is a shared experience amongst MPs across all political parties because we all have that same atmosphere of being in the House, of being part of those debates. And also, you know, the way that we exist as kind of online personalities and being public figures, we all have these shared experiences. And while our politics might be very, very different, because of those shared experiences, there is a bit of a camaraderie.
Which is why there's such concern from this side of the House.
Thank the honourable member, right honourable member, my apologies, for his intervention there. And
Wait a minute.
thank the honourable member, right honourable member, my apologies.
If you're like me, you might be wondering, what's the difference? Well, you may have noticed the chair isn't just overseeing proceedings, they're also the only person being addressed at all times.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
How's that, Mr. Speaker?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Members of the House are only ever addressing the Speaker or Deputy Speaker directly and refer to other members of the House exclusively in the third person.
Mr. Speaker, that is more of a record of action than the honourable gentleman in his 2.5 years in the job.
And famously using a very specific phrasing.
I thank my honourable friend, the honourable gentleman, for
If the honourable member agrees with me.
the honourable lady in the
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I thank my honourable friend for his intervention. It was perfect.
The honourable member is used for MPs of the opposite benches and my honourable friend for those on the same side. Right honourable is reserved for current and former cabinet ministers and other senior officials. All of these conventions help support that essential cordial atmosphere that makes Parliament feel the way it does, ideally even throughout the most contentious and heated debates during the busiest days within the chamber.
There's only one chlorinated chicken that I can see in this house, and he's on that bench.
To further his own career. Remind him of anybody.
But wait a minute, on that note, why do MPs often seem to be making such heartfelt, impassioned speeches to an almost empty room?
And what I want to get on the record immediately is that, as the Honourable Gentleman...
Millions of gallons of water that...
Like, where is everybody?
I feel like sometimes I see someone have a really important message that is no one's paying attention.
I mean, I think it's important to say first off, there are 1,000,001 things that MPs work on.
Absolutely.
And being in the chamber debating things is just one of those things. The day-to-day is so different every day. I could be, sometimes I'm spending time in the chamber debating, sometimes I'm doing questions, but I'm often having meetings with different groups. I've got a few different roles in Parliament. I'm the chair of the all-party group for universities, so I meet a lot of universities. The great thing is that because Parliament is pretty transparent, there's a formal record of everything. If I really want to boost an important speech that I've made, even if it wasn't a busy day in the debate chamber, I can do that by sharing the videos, sharing the transcript of what I said, and making sure that clip goes pretty wide.
So the chamber of the House of Commons might be the bit you recognize, but it's actually just one cog in an intricate machine. Behind it lies a maze of over 1,000 rooms, nearly 5 kilometers of corridors, and more than 100 staircases. And the real work, turning ideas into actual laws, well, that often happens out of sight, in meetings, briefings, and especially in select committees.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to our Innovation Showcase. The Committee for Science, Innovation and Technology is really keen to understand how the UK supports innovators and also what more...
Select committees scrutinise government policy. I'm on the Science, Innovation and Technology Select Committee. And these are cross-party groups. So I work with some Labour MPs on there, some Liberal Democrat MPs and some Conservative MPs. And I'm good friends, I would say, with all of the people on the committee because we work really well together. And that kind of cross-party stuff, it's way less viral.
Yeah, you have a shared interest. You're all intelligent in the field of your tech.
Exactly. Yeah, it's way less viral, but the cross-party working is really positive. I think some of the best stuff in Parliament actually happens in the select committees.
There's a lot of love in this committee, isn't there? The earlier session, we were talking about the risks of the national welfare.
Thank you very much, Mr. Miller. We will be supporting this.
The government, I believe the previous government as well, but the government has certainly announced the Office for Investment.
Why would any government not want AI to be ethical and safe?
What they would argue, I think, is that any kind of restrictions and regulations are...
It's lovely to be in. It's a very great pleasure of mine to welcome Professor Svetlana Ratchev. So Svetlana is the director of the Institute for Advanced Manufacturing, amongst many other things. My job prior to the election was I worked at the Institute for Advanced Manufacturing, first as a PhD student, then as a research fellow, and then a senior research fellow. So Svetlana and I...
On this topic, actually, what I find very interesting about you is that you didn't come from a background of politics. You came from being a teacher, engineering, and I really appreciate that you haven't come from a politics background. Do you feel like you're slightly disadvantaged or more advantaged because of that?
I think advantaged. I mean, there are disadvantages, of course. And, as you say, for me, I finished university in 2013. I trained as a teacher. I used to teach high school physics. And then I went on to become a scientist at Nottingham University, and then eventually was an academic teaching degree level apprenticeships. And I kind of never really followed politics that closely when I was younger. I came to it when I was a bit older, really. So I got kind of in my mid-20s. And it was when I trained as a teacher that I was like, I really don't like how education policy is in this country. I really don't like how things are changing. And this was, sort of mid-2010s, like 2013 kind of time. And I started following politics much more closely. Ultimately, I moved to my constituency, Erewash in the East Midlands. I moved there when I got a job at Nottingham University. And I did so because it was a nice, easy distance from the university. And around the same time, though, we had the 2015 general election. And Labour lost that election, and I didn't like that. I'd supported the Labour Party. So I woke up the next day and thought, I'm going to join the Labour Party. Never had any intention to be...
Interesting.
Yeah, literally the day after the election. Never had any intention to be a candidate. I just wanted to deliver a few leaflets here and there.
Yeah.
And then, as kind of time went on, I kind of volunteered to do a few things here and there. And before you knew it, somebody was saying, hey, Adam, we've got a vacancy on the local parish council. Do you want to be the candidate?
Wow.
And I was like, whoa, no, I don't think I want to be the candidate. I got sort of talked around
and
ultimately thought, yeah, okay, I'll give this a go. And I lost that election by 7 votes, something like that.
Oh, wow.
Real close. But I kind of really got the bug for being able to help people. And it was that made me ultimately, a few years later, decide, actually, I think I'd like to be the Member of Parliament.
I'm here with Councillor James Dawson, our leader of council.
It's been a real journey as I've been doing all of those things in kind of grassroots politics, but also alongside that, working as an academic. I think that gives me a lot of advantages because I don't just see the inside of politics. I get to see the real world.
Adam Thompson. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Whether it is the crevasse on the island outside of Asda in Long Eaton or the array...
One of the things I said was there should be more people in politics that understand science.
Yes, that's so great.
But I'd say that's not that rare an experience anymore. I came in this year at the most recent general election. Lots of new MPs came in, and lots of them were from backgrounds outside of politics.
Adam Thompson.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. As the first metrologist elected to this House...
I'm an historian by training and profession.
I have dedicated my working life to teaching and researching in higher education.
Very few surgeons are ever elected, and I will bring my experience of 42 years as an NHS doctor to Parliament.
As a scientist working on neglected tropical diseases.
My background is in humanities, hers is in science.
Coming as I have from my previous role in the NHS AI and Digital Regulation Service.
Intellectual energy suggests that this Parliament will be enhanced by a new generation of thinkers and doers who will serve this place and their constituents well.
And may I too welcome each and every one of the new members.
So being in the chamber is just one of the ways MPs serve their constituents. And honestly, it might be for the best. Because if every big decision had to happen in that room, well, we'd have a bit of an issue. You see, MPs are only allowed to speak during debates if they're sitting on one of these iconic green benches. The problem, though, well, the chamber only seats 427, and there are 650 MPs.
When it comes to the actual debate in the Commons, do you have assigned seating? Like, do you have to sit a certain place? Do you have a favorite seat? Like, what's going on there?
So I can sit wherever. I mean, in theory, I can literally sit wherever. We have the
Really?
we have the government on one side and the opposition on the other side. In theory, I can sit wherever I want. But convention says I always sit on the government side because I'm a government MP.
Be like Mean Girls.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's very much like, the cliques sit here.
You can't sit with us.
You can't sit with us. But on Wednesdays, I do wear pink. It is generally the case you can sit anywhere. And on busy days, sometimes you can't sit in your preferential spot. Usually we sit in the same place though, and that's useful because part of being able to speak and debate in Parliament is catching the speaker's eye.
Adam Thompson.
He sees where you are and sees that you want to speak. If you're in a different spot every time, sometimes that can be hard. So he knows that I sit usually on the second row, a little bit further away from the front bench. And that's generally my spot. And most people have the same spot. And it's useful when we're looking around at where, who's in the chamber and who's debating on things. I can look in certain spots and know which of my colleagues are there and which aren't.
Interesting. Speaking of seats though, one thing I did find interesting when researching this video was that in order to get a seat on busy days, because there's not as many seats as there are members of Parliament, one can attend the prayers that happen every morning before the session starts. And by attending prayers, you get a seat guaranteed. But these are Anglican Christian prayers. And so I found that interesting considering that 40% of MPs that were recently elected did not swear an oath on the Bible or any holy text. In fact, you yourself didn't as well. So how do you feel about that as a tradition still being in place, despite the fact that 40% of MPs don't necessarily align with said tradition?
Yeah, it's a really interesting piece of history. I mean, you touched on the point that there are Anglican present. It is, of course, because the UK, while we have quite separate religion and politics for the most part, we are constitutionally an Anglican country, right? And that's why that's still in place. I think it's a really interesting piece of procedure that that's the case. What you actually do is you fill out a little green card, you write your name on it, it's called a prayer card, you put it in your seat, and then provided you turn up to the prayers, then you're allowed to leave that in for the day, and that's your spot. There's some interesting politics, actually. So the Labour Party doesn't really use the system. Most of the other parties do, and a handful of Labour MPs do. But if you look on the debates on TV, most of the time, the Labour MPs, you won't see us using those system. It's just historically, we haven't really bothered using it, and we just accept that people turn up at different times of the day and sort of first come, first served.
Frankly, rather ridiculous behaviour, such as the practice of having to queue up at the opening of the chamber to place a prayer card to book your seat. And
There's a modernisation programme at the moment. I understand that lots of the aspects of the way that we conduct the House of Commons are being modernised. I'm sure there will be a conversation about whether that continues. For me, you're right. I didn't give the oath, I gave an affirmation. I'm not religious, and none of my family are, and lots of MPs aren't religious. I don't participate in the prayers particularly. Sometimes I have to be there to reserve my seat, but I'll just be in the room while it's happening.
It is kind of crazy that the foundation of this country's government still depends on 650 people scrambling for seats each morning, but it's largely because Parliament has understandably outgrown a building designed around 200 years ago. That's also why new MPs, like Adam, can end up waiting months just to get assigned a London office. And when they do, well, it might be a 10-minute hike to the chamber. On top of all that, they're not just working here. MPs are constantly juggling two jobs, one in Westminster and one back in their local constituency, which for some can mean a serious commute.
One thing I've always been curious about with members of Parliament, especially like you, who you don't live in London, but you have to work in London.
Yeah.
So how do you balance being able to live in your constituency and represent your constituency while also constantly having to be in London to represent your constituency?
I, like most MPs, live for the most part in my constituency.
Okay,
It's been home for the last decade. It's always going to be my home.
Mm-hmm.
That's where my cats are, and that's where my partner is, and that's where my community is. So generally speaking, I'm there Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I'm in London on Thursday, but usually it's Thursday through to Sunday back home. And I'm doing kind of local things, visiting businesses, talking to community groups, knocking on doors, all of that wonderful constituency stuff that is frankly the best part of the job. I love doing all of that. Obviously, though, as an MP, I have to come to London and represent my constituents in the House of Commons. Mm-hmm. So there are different options for this. Some people choose to have a flat down here. Some people choose to do other things. I stay in a hotel, actually. One of the reasons I do that is because I think it's important for me to always have my home be in the constituency. And I think if I don't have a permanent base in London, it's nice for that to be the case. In terms of cost for the taxpayer, it actually works out about the same because the hotel is kind of more expensive per night, but I'm staying there way less than if I had a flat. So it doesn't really make a massive amount of difference. But there is a balance between the two, very much.
Something I've always wondered is, how are you able to balance letting the voices of your constituents be heard on a policy in which maybe you don't agree with, but the majority of your constituents would?
It's a really difficult point, that, because how can I ever really know what the majority of my constituents think? Ultimately, we have a system in the UK of representative democracy. So my constituents elected me. I've then got a 4 or 5 year term to go to Parliament and put forward my views. In theory, I could do a poll of all my constituents, but being able to access all 95,000 people and get their answer on a specific issue is almost impossible. So sometimes there are those issues, but a lot of things are broadly the national picture. And I, as a Labour MP, was elected to broadly look after the Labour position.
You won the poll. You're representing your constituents. So the goal is, I am going to be doing, because I was elected to do what they want me to do.
That's right.
That actually is quite fair.
Becca and I agreed that the issue we wanted to raise as part of this debate today was dignity. Becca's nan.
Do you feel like maybe within our lifespan we'll see a more modernization of how Parliament allows videos and documentation? Because I feel like the British public would appreciate more transparency, I suppose, within these things.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, obviously in the last kind of 10 years, there's been a massive boom in politicians doing social media. You know, I put a lot of effort into Facebook and TikTok because I think it's really important that I'm communicating in as many ways as I can. And I think that's probably only going to expand over time. Yeah, I recently launched a newsletter on Substack because, because you know, lots of people want to subscribe to like a longer form of content.
I find that more professional as well.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not like laden with ads of Zuckerberg's or whatever. It's here's just my presentation to you.
Yeah.
Do you do TikTok dances as well?
Not yet, but you know, never say never, right?
Really pleased to be out in Nottingham Road Ward in Long Eaton today. I'm here with my fantastic friends.
Something that I think not many people know is quite how grassroots British politics is. So, you know, when I was selected to be a candidate about 2 years ahead of the election, people often think of political candidates working in campaign centres with lots of employees on phones. Actually, when I first started, and it was me and my friends John and Linda who were in their 70s.
Really?
And that was our whole campaign. The first thing I did actually was build up a team. So lots of these people that I work with very closely, but our kind of core team of activists that helped deliver a general election campaign in my constituency is about 5 or 6 people, all working really closely together and all volunteers. Candidates don't get paid. Definitely the volunteers don't get paid. So, you know, much more so than a lot of the TV and film political dramas imply, it's a really grassroots outfit so much of the time. And you know, my team and I spoke to about 20,000 residents in the 2 years running up to the election. But we did that in a team of maybe 5 or 6 kind of core people and maybe 20, 30 more people. It's just a lot of work over a long period of time.
Despite how stretched they are, your MP is there to represent you. Whether it's an issue in your area or something being debated in Parliament, you can contact them, and you should.
One of the things that people often assume about politicians is that we can be quite hard to access. Actually, my experience is it's almost the opposite. One of the best parts about British politics is how easy it is to access your local MP, much more so than it is in lots of other countries. And I wish more people knew that.
So to wrap this up, a big thanks to Adam Thompson from Arawash for inviting me into Parliament to learn more about the process and to basically be able to have this type of conversation. More of the intricacies of Parliament and inner workings of the government should be made known to the public, because not only is it really interesting, but also it just helps remove that curtain to allow people to understand more about the processes of what's going on. So I'm just very thankful to Adam for giving me this opportunity. Also, I hope you recognize I've never done a video with this much kit involved, a 3 camera, 2 light. There was so many things involved with this, and I tried to hobble it together on my own. My friend Luke helped me out as well, like setting things up, and it was really fun. It feels like a bit too big for my britches, but I had a good time. I hope you've learned something along the way. And if you're wondering like, oh, well, how did Adam find your YouTube channel? Well, actually, the video that sparked his eye, he's watched quite a few, he'd said, but the one was actually the one I made on developers and how UK developers have an issue at the moment of converting disused office space into future slums. And I added a bit more nuance to the conversation and talking about how planning works and how there's so much bureaucracy and how it's breaking down and the reasons for it. So if you haven't seen that yet, well, he'd recommend it, I guess. So other than that, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you back on my YouTube channel next Sunday. Goodbye.